When working on any project, it's very important to have a project governance in place. This makes sure the project runs smoothly and all stakeholders are involved in making decisions and keeping the project on track. In this video, I'll run through some of the project governance steps we use, as well as some of the project's governance steps that we don't use. 3 key points that I really want to make in this video is firstly, to set up regular meetings with your stakeholders. Secondly, to make sure you keep recordings or minutes of each of these meetings to refer back to. And finally, keep the structure consistent so that you can refer back to this and improve on an ongoing basis. I'm Matt Grace, Managing Director of Flying Donkey. Let's get into it. Firstly, let's look at ticketing systems. The ticketing system is very important for project governance. It is the core tool used by the project team, as well as the core system that allows you to report out for your project governance. Without a proper ticketing system and without proper use of a ticketing system, project governance becomes very difficult. Internally at Flying Donkey, we use Jira as our ticketing system, and we have every piece of work that we're working on a project within this ticketing system. This allows us to add comments, assignees, and statuses to tickets, but most importantly, allows us to report live on what's going on. This reporting live can either be done by running a report out and sending this out to stakeholders, or alternatively giving stakeholders direct access to the ticketing system to see what's going on through various dashboards or filters. Having this single source of truth and transparency with your stakeholders allows you to build trust. And trust is the main thing that's going to get a project delivered and allows you to give a strong project governance framework. Reporting. We generally report on a monthly basis, and that's only because clients generally can log in whenever they like into the system to see the progress is up to. In these monthly reports, this becomes a summary of the tickets out of the ticketing system as to what we've actually worked on for the month. So our reports generally show any tickets worked on for the month, the amount of time spent on those tickets, and if anything has gone astray on any of those tickets, any credited time we have put against those tickets. This is simply a snapshot out of the ticketing system at a point in time and allows stakeholders to have a quick overview of what's been worked on and where the time has gone to. Quarterly meetings. So we've got a ticketing system in place and we're sending out our monthly reports, but then we want to have our quarterly meetings. This is going to be a face-to-face or video call with the stakeholders themselves to run through what's been happening for the previous quarter. At the same time, we also want to plan for what's happening in the coming quarter, and we also want to discuss any issues that have occurred in the past quarter and how we want to address those going forward. It's important that these meetings are made routine, and it's important that these are minuted to be referred to in future meetings. It's very key that these meetings happen routinely, and they happen on a quarterly basis on a very similar time frame, and that the meetings themselves run in a very similar fashion. That means you've got a strong governance in place, and that the way you're working through your problems is the same each time. Now, I've described how we do monthly reports and quarterly meetings, and there's a few reasons for this. We don't look to do daily or weekly meetings with clients, and the reason for this is over my time, I've found these become a significant waste of time. Management is really looking for high-level overviews of what's occurring, and they're not interested in the detail. And simply, they don't have enough time to know. All they want to know is that the project is aligning to the budget and that a project is moving their business forward. This can really only be achieved on a quarterly basis because within the daily or weekly timeframes, there's just not enough time to deliver enough large-scale business change for the clients for the stakeholders to see any movement. At the same time, by reducing these daily or weekly interactions, you actually save significant time on your admin costs. Generally here at Flying Donkey, we run at about 20 to 25% admin, which is a lot lower than the normal standard 35%. This can be partly attributed to this. We try and shield any of the developers or members of the team from generally attending stakeholder meetings, and we try and keep those routine stakeholder meetings so the expectations are set that they're the meetings they can bring and address their issues. Obviously, we run an open door policy, and what that means is if the project stakeholders do log into the ticketing system and they see something of concern, they can always give us a call to discuss on the spot and we'll fix it straight away. But they know that there's that governance framework in place, that we will address that at the quarterly meeting and rectify it at that point. I mentioned both these points previously, but you must keep records of these meetings and you must keep these meetings consistent. Record keeping can be as simple as the minutes of a meeting, which are very good to give you a summary of what you have and the points to address next time. Because what happens in the subsequent meeting is you should bring those minutes back in and refer to what you promised to do last time and make sure that's happened and make sure the issues you encountered previously have been resolved. At the same time, putting that structure in place and setting expectations for project stakeholders means that they know what to expect at a certain period of time. As long as you're delivering and putting these projects in place, they'll know that they can come and see the progress there and raise any concerns they have, so they have a clear path to resolve any issues. At the end of the day, the project stakeholder is really about delivering the project, so the project governance is there to facilitate that. I've talked about how we do project governance here at Flying Donkey, which comes down to using a transparent ticketing system, monthly reporting to clients, and quarterly meetings with stakeholders. But there's a number of things I've rejected in our project governance framework, and I want to run through them and explain why we don't use them as part of our process. The 3 things are issue and risk logs, secondly, a large end-to-end project plan, and thirdly, daily or weekly management meetings. All 3 of these project governance are very common in large corporations, But I've personally seen very little value from any of these 3 project governance frameworks, and I'll explain this in a little bit more detail. Risk and issue logs. Obviously, knowing your risks and issues is important, but doing them in a risk and issue log shows no value to me. In my experience, when I've seen risk and issue logs done, they're generally done by the project manager themselves, and they're also not very well maintained. But the real crux of the issue is that the team themselves, the developers, the analysts, etc., actually never refer to these logs. And you can think about it this way. If you're a developer and you think something's going to happen, are you going to open the risk log and check if there's been a risk and mitigating things put in there? No, you're just going to look at the problem and try and solve it yourself. Or alternatively, you'll turn to your lead developer and ask them how to get around this risk you're seeing. It's really about empowering your team to see challenges and being transparent with what's happening. If they see an issue, then the developer should report it, and they can report it on the ticketing system. There now isn't a single point where all the risks and issues are resolved, but they're actually resolved at the lower, more functional level. And this is where risks are actually avoided. Secondly, the big plan. And I've seen more big plans than I would like to have ever seen. And this is where you go in and you see a 2, 3, or 4 year project plan on how you're going to deliver all these pieces of software, so for that plan to be out of date only 2 weeks later. Now, I've discussed numerous issues with these in other videos, but essentially it boils down to estimation and planning of those large plans is extremely difficult. To foresee all the unknowns that you can in the future is very, very hard. Software doesn't really lend itself to this way of big planning, which we generally refer to as waterfall. Rather, it lends itself to agile, which is small iterative steps to deploy the software. And finally, keeping those plans updated is an extremely large and manual task. Even with software packages involved, this task can simply take a project manager all of their time, rather than actually concentrating on delivering the project that they need to do. Focusing down on these small fortnightly sprints means that functionality is delivered quickly and easily, and you can adjust and adapt as the project is delivered. There's no main plan to maintain, a backlog sits there with features that you need, and there's no overhead to manage all this. A big plan document just doesn't work, and I've never seen it work correctly in a software development project. The final piece here is daily and weekly management meetings, and as I mentioned before, these are simply a waste of time because there's not enough movement to convey to management. Daily is obviously just not going to happen. A person simply can't do enough work in a single day to show you significant business difference at that time. Weekly is the same thing. If you're in a project, a week is not a huge amount of time to develop, test, and deploy a piece of functionality that shows enough business difference for someone in management to care. They're really only going to start seeing actual changes within the month time frame, and realistically, they're going to only really see changes at the quarterly piece. And that's where we try and hit the meetings. We try and stage our meetings on a quarterly basis so that management can see these large business movements in their software, and they can make sure they're aligning to their overall business and strategic goals. This also means there's a lot less admin, because obviously running daily and weekly meetings detracts from the work that everyone's trying to do. All right, so while we don't conform to a general project governance approach, we have picked elements that we believe work best to give us a lean project governance framework that allows us to work efficiently, yet still have coverage in place to show stakeholders how projects are moving through. With this, we believe the project governance frameworks of using a ticketing system, reporting monthly, and bringing things to stakeholders quarterly allows us to have better documentation as we have a single ticketing source to keep all of our information. It's easier to plan because you're only planning 2, 4, or 6 weeks ahead, and you don't have to continually update large big plans. You're reinforcing a routine with smaller iterative steps and consistent meeting processes. You are making sure the process is repeatable and that a project governance framework is put in place. You're learning from mistakes, and most importantly, this framework does work within a lot of compliance for wider certifications, in that these certifications require documentation and minuting of meetings in order to achieve their sign-offs, and this project governance framework qualifies for those. If you have any questions about project governance, technology compliance, or how to deliver projects generally in the software space, feel free to reach out and have a chat. We'd be happy to talk to you.